Hi, I'm Linda Brubaker, and this is the first Job Search Lunch and Learn of 2024. I can't believe it's 2024. What we're doing here is a combination of things. Today, we're going to be really talking about how to restart, refresh, renew your job search or start it for the first time. A lot of questions and so on. But what I want to start by doing is reminding you that the chat is open. Make sure that you're putting your contact information in the chat. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you and the kinds of things you're looking for, and make sure that you're including not just a broad kind of an information base, but tell us a little bit about some of the specific job titles you're looking for and the locations you're looking for. Are you looking for something that's completely remote? Are you looking for something in a specific city? So that when we're doing this in our private group, we can really talk a little bit more about how we can help you. So the more information you give us, the better. Now, remember, because it's a chat, it will be more difficult to see, but I'm going to post a copy of the chat in that private group. So don't worry if you don't get it all. As you're posting your information in the chat, please include a clickable link to your LinkedIn URL. Mentioned at some points that LinkedIn is restricting the number of connection requests you can make with a note if you have a free account. And out of curiosity, how many of you have a free account? Okay. I don't know whether you've gotten those restrictions yet, but at the moment, actually, I'm restricted to 5 connection messages a month. We're still working on LinkedIn to try and change that, but there are ways to get around it if you have a free account. And one of the things that you can do is that you can send a message to someone in a private chat or in a private group or in any group. And because you're already a member of the group, you can message them without any problems or any restrictions. And because you have that kind of connection, that joint background area there, okay, that joint interest, they're much more likely to accept it. So please connect with all of us here. Make sure you connect with me. And we're going to go forward from there. So I'm going to start a little bit by asking you, okay, if we're talking about renewing, refreshing, restarting, I'm just curious. Can you show of hands, how many of you are starting a job search for the first time in a while? Okay. I'm not, so most of you have been in job search and you are renewing it, you are revitalizing it, you're keeping going. Is that correct? Want to see some shakes or some, there we go. Yes, Laura. You're telling me that you're redoing it or are you starting it over?
Oh, just a continuation.
Perfect. And I think that's what most of us are doing. Okay. And it's actually not a bad time to be doing that. I want to start a little bit with my cracked crystal ball for what the job search is going to be looking like and what the job market is going to be looking like. And then we're going to move forward from there. You're going to see a lot of information coming out over the next week or so about what the job market is predicted to be in 2024. Take all of it, including what I'm about to say, with a grain of salt. Because as many people who are going to do the gloom and doom, you're going to have the people who are going to say it's great. So let me tell you what I'm seeing and what I'm seeing from a variety of different sources that back it up, as well as a couple of the trends that I'm going to talk about. So here's the gloom and doom part, if you want to hear that. And that is that jobs are actually, if you're noticing that job postings are down, you're right. There are fewer jobs being posted and were posted in the month of November and even in December than before. Hires were down in November. Now, that sounds gloom and doom. It's really not. Here's the good news. Layoffs are down. companies are trying to reevaluate what those jobs should look like. And the overall prediction is that there will be a 4% increase in the number of jobs hired within various major companies and small companies as well over the course of the year. So the actual employment rate, the actual number of hires is predicted to grow by about 4% on average. That's a good thing. The next good thing that I'm seeing is that companies are reevaluating actually how they're doing their hiring. And it's a slow process, a really slow process. Unfortunately, part of their reevaluation is that they want to be more deliberate in terms of who they're hiring and how, what specific skills they are looking for. Which means that unfortunately, while we were hoping that the hiring cycle would decrease in terms of length, I'm not sure that's going to happen, at least not for the first couple of months. What I am seeing, though, is if you heard me say the word skills, they're looking for what skills people should have. That's a really good thing. And we'll talk about that again in a minute, because what that means is that as you are doing your job search and you're reevaluating, you're refreshing your materials, the emphasis on the skills that you bring to that particular role becomes even more important. Now, at the beginning of the year, as well as at any other time, we find that a lot of people do that kind of a spray and pray approach, right? I want to get my information out there as quickly as possible to as many people as possible. In this market, one of the things that we are seeing, and I'm really excited about this, is that companies are getting more deliberate in terms of the way that they're looking at those resumes, or at least that's the prediction. That if they're really looking at skills-based hiring, what skills do we need in order to build up our workforce and to make sure that people are doing the work that we need them to do in the way we need them to do it or want them to do it, and that they bring a variety of different aspects to the roles, then that emphasis on how you match, that emphasis on skills is going to be more and more important. In fact, one of the trends that I've seen, or that I'm seeing as a prediction, is that for those of you who don't have degrees, and I don't know whether that applies to anyone, the emphasis on having a degree is going to be less important if you have the requisite skills and experience. I've now seen at least 2 examples of people who were specifically told, don't worry about it. If you've got the experience, we still want to talk to you anyway. And at least one of those people was recently hired. So that's a great thing. The other thing is that some companies are being encouraged to develop a skills base or a skills database for their workforce. Now, what that means is that instead of just, here's the job descriptions, here are the things we're looking for, the tasks, they're trying to look at what skills do we need people to have. And then they're building that internal database of the skills that they think are important for their workforce moving forward. Another reason for you to highlight the skills you have that are related to the work that company does. Don't expect companies to be able to pull it out without you being able to help them along the way. Last piece of advice in terms of my cracked crystal ball for the start of the hiring year is that you're going to start to see a lot of, we hope, people announcing new jobs. And that's a great thing. It's another demonstration that hiring is taking place. So here's a tip for you. When you see somebody announce a new job, take a look at the company they're going to, because that means that company is hiring. If you see somebody announce a new job, take a look at where they left, because that means in all likelihood that somebody will have to be replaced. And that company, if it's something that you're interested in, may also be hiring. So get that heads up, that head start. Okay, so that's my cracked crystal ball for the beginning of the year. I'm actually, I last year, I think I started with a down note and not feeling very confident about what the year in hiring is going to look like. I'm still not 100% sure it's going to be great, but I think it's not going to be bad. I think it's going to be better than last year. So I'm going to ask you all to hold me to it and come back and reevaluate with me as the year goes on. All right, so if we're talking now about renewing, refreshing, restarting your job search, we've said that one of the things we were going to do is talk about what's working and what's not. So I'd like to start by, if you've got a success, something that's working for you in your job search, okay, let us know. Anybody have a success that they'd be willing to share? Okay, Deetra.
Yeah, I just want to say that I recently actually just accepted a position yesterday. And I think just attending these Zoom meetings have really helped me improve my interviewing skills. So I would say this is something that people should continue to do. I found it really helpful in my job search.
Thank you, Deetra. I'm glad. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the job?
Sure, I can tell you a little bit about it. It is for a professional society, and I'll be an assistant director of publications, and I start in 2 weeks.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have a success to share? Michael.
Yes, I actually got a position right before the holidays. I'm starting tomorrow, but
Congratulations.
really, thank you. What I did put in is I said kind of the same thing about having these groups, but really building connections. One of the things that helped me land this job was actually reaching out to alums from my old alma mater, built a friendship. That person introduced me to some other people. And then I interviewed for a role at the institution. They said, no, but we have the perfect role for you. And then I ended up being an advocate for it. So that helped out. And then also through networking, I use curiosity. I'm very interested in what people do, their background, their stories. And going with that, when you're having that free LinkedIn, I just kind of send a blank message and my LinkedIn profile is intriguing enough. And when they ask what's the interest, I make sure that I do look at their profile before I do the invite so I can say I'm interested in X, Y, and Z. And just getting to know individuals, people are really open to kind of sharing their experiences and kind of their knowledge base.
And that's absolutely right. And that's a great point, is sending those messages. In fact, I think I put in the private group the way that you can message people who are not part of your connection or your first level groups. Sending those messages to say not just I want to connect, and maybe not even connect right away, but to express interest in what they do. It's them first, then you. That's the way you develop the relationships. If you're just going out and saying, here's what I need, you're not as likely to get a response. But if you say, I'm really interested in what you do, can you tell me more about it? How did you get here? What do you like about it? And then you can use that to build that relationship. That relationship will help you get your foot in the door, or may help you get your foot in the door, if nothing else, to a connection and maybe an advocate. You never know where it will go, but with any kind of networking, it's always more than 50% them, and then just a little bit of you. Give more than you get. Ask more than you take. I'm really glad to hear that, Michael. Congratulations. And the tip of going to alumni, okay, both from your school, because you already have that connection. Okay, you have something in common, but don't be afraid to go back to past fellow employees or past people who work for the same companies that you did at any level, because again, you have those relationships in common. Great tips. Any other successes? Okay. Then let's start talking a little bit about some tips and some questions about how you can renew or refresh that job search. So between Michael and Deidre, they both mentioned two things that are going to be really important as we move forward. One of which is that you need to develop these group support systems and learn from each other. We're finding that not just these online groups, but if you can attend anything in person, if that's your style, getting those relationships built is a good thing. More importantly, what we're finding is that in groups like this, or in our private group, you get an opportunity for some mentoring and support. These are all people on this call who are in the same boat you are. They're trying things that may work for them, that may work for you, or they have questions and you can support them too. But this group support setting, asking questions, getting support from one another, and from me, okay, is a way to really improve not only your skill set, but to help you move forward in your job search and to help make that job search successful. One of the things that we're finding is that even among companies, people getting hired, one of the things some people are looking for and ways that companies are trying to rebrand themselves is about talking about that whole idea of mentoring, supporting, coaching. In fact, if we're talking about a job search and one of the potential things you might be able to negotiate for when you get that job is that you want to be able to set up some sort of a mentorship or support program with your new boss or someone else on your team. Whether you've asked for it up front, Deidre and Michael, or whether you are doing it as part of a negotiation for an offer, talking about the fact that you would like to know who can you go to, who's your go-to person, who's your support person as part of this, asking whether the company has a formal mentorship program, is another way of demonstrating that you are wanting to be actively involved in growth within the company and making sure that you can do the best you can and get up to speed as quickly as possible within that organization and that new role. By the same token, doing it here, asking for advice and support in these groups is an important part of your job search because we've all been there. So what's working for one person may work for you too. And if you've got a question, other people may too, and we can come up with some of those answers together. So that whole idea of mentorship group support is a big part of job search moving forward, as well as once you're on the job, getting some of those things in place. Excellent. All right, other things that I want to talk about, and by the way, break in with any questions or whatever at any time. Sorry, trying to pull up my notes. There we go. Okay. So if you're rethinking your job search, does everybody have a clear idea of what it is you want to do? And have those goals changed? We all talk about resolutions for the beginning of the year. I'm not a big resolutions person because a resolution is something that you do once and then you're done. But if we're talking about job search, reevaluating on a routine basis what it is that you're doing, what's working and what's not, is not a bad thing. So has anybody rethought what kinds of jobs you're looking for? What kinds of activities you're doing that's working and that's not? Anybody have any questions? If not, I'm going to just keep going.
I think it's really difficult to figure out what you want to do after you've been laid off. You're like, okay, I liked what I was doing, but do I want to do that again? And I've gone through this over and over again. I got laid off in September. I actually took a job for 3 weeks and found out it was the worst. It was worse than what it was. And so after 3 weeks, I cut the cord and said, you know what? I can't do this anymore. Be it right or be it wrong, I stepped away from it. And actually, the woman would have driven me crazy who I worked for. So I'm like, okay, I am now looking at what do I like to do? What do I want to do? And fortunately, I'm in a position, I'm older probably than a lot of you, that I can say, do I even want to continue in corporate America? Do I want to step away from it? And that's a luxury that I have. I don't know if I'm mentally ready to do that. So I've got all these things going on in my head that I'm trying to figure out. And I'm sure a lot of you do too. But anyway, that's kind of where I am.
Good to know. And actually, that's a great point, is that when you're in job search and you've been laid off or you've been gone for a while, there is the temptation to try and just get back in to do exactly what you were doing before. Thinking that that's the easiest way for you to get back in the job market. And I'll be honest, it might be. But I look at this as an opportunity to try and figure out what it is you really want to do. The advantage of a job search right now is that you don't have to apply for just one kind of job. You can apply for lots of them because you're tailoring, right, your materials. Everybody shake your head every time you apply for a job, which means that you can apply for lots of different kinds of things. And I love that idea of trying to figure out what it is you really want to do. Now, trying and changing along the way is a big thing. In fact, research tells us that people will change careers, not jobs, careers, an average of 5 times over the course of their lifetime. So that means making a pivot of any kind. And that's a really good thing. Yes, Frank.
I didn't want to interrupt your thought. Okay. I read in a posting earlier today, I think, you shouldn't apply down. Instead, you should apply up. And I want to get your thoughts on that. So just curious as to, kind of a similar thing is that which way gets you in the door faster, I guess.
So it depends. Applying down is not a bad thing, but you have to be able to justify why you're doing it. And to some extent, applying down, you may get some questions about why you're doing that, what's your reasoning, and so on. I would, instead of saying that you are applying down, I would say that you're applying sideways.
That's
Because
been my typical response is, yeah, I have smaller company, this is a bigger company, blah, blah, although it hasn't worked yet.
then one of the things that we need to do is talk about how to talk about that. Okay. And how you can bring your information in to make it valuable to them. I know that we're a couple of years out of the pandemic. But whether it's the pandemic that you're thinking about or layoffs or whatever else it is, one of the things that we're finding is useful, or that I'm finding is useful in terms of conversations, is that you've taken a chance to reevaluate what's really important to you in a job. And here's what you're really looking for, and this job fits all the boxes. So you don't look at it as a step down, and I wouldn't even use those terms. Okay. You're looking at this as the opportunity for where you want to be now. That puts things in a much more positive light and helps you to walk away or walk around that idea of it's a step down. Now, sometimes that step down or step to the side may mean that reevaluating your resume and your materials and even your interview stories is going to be important because you don't want to overpower in what you're talking about. Everything that you do has to be tailored to that new job. But Frank, I don't believe that you shouldn't step into or look for jobs that are at different levels or different kinds of organizations. If you call it a step down or a step to the side, it's fine.
Well, that's what they call it, right? So that I'm using their words, and it's a challenge because I've been asked that, I think, 3 interviews in a row. So
I agree, but that's one of the reasons that I would like you to preempt that in your cover letter.
quote Joni Mitchell. I love it.
One of my favorites. I like her. Okay. All right, Christina.
Yeah, just to your point about you don't have to apply for one specific kind of job. I totally agree with that because the roles I'm looking for have project management qualities to them. But when I'm networking, it's kind of difficult not to like hone in on one role. When somebody asks me what kind of job are you looking for, to say like a specific job. So how do you talk to them about what you're looking for in a job, or how do you get around that
And that's exactly
pigeonholing
right.
yourself?
You talk to them about what you're looking for. So one of the boxes that we put ourselves into and that other people help to put ourselves into is looking for jobs based on job title. We know that job titles vary so much from company to company that job titles, in my mind, are almost useless. So talk about the tasks that you want to do, what you bring, what you are looking for in that way, rather than a title. It could be called a project manager in one organization. It could be called a team leader in another. It could be called manager of fun in a third. We don't know what they're called. So don't worry, don't get hung up on titles, and don't let other people get hung up on titles for you. Now, that said, I am going to suggest, however, that when you're looking at your LinkedIn profile, and we're talking about what job titles you are listing as part of your experience, I want you to take a little bit of creative license there. Your job title doesn't have to be exactly what it was in real life. So for example, if your title is manager 3, okay, what, right? I want you to put in, because we know that these are so different from organization to organization, I want you to start typing in a job title that you think is generic if it's not your exact title, and use the LinkedIn drop-down box for that title. Then use a dash and put in your real title. Here's the reason for that. LinkedIn is, in many cases, a search engine. Because of the way LinkedIn functions and the way this LinkedIn database, in effect, functions, they do searches based on what they consider to be their key value terms. Their key value terms are those that are built into their drop-down boxes. So if your title doesn't exactly match one of their drop-downs, you may not be found in a search for that particular role. We want to be able to use LinkedIn for a variety of reasons, one of which is to showcase what you do, but you also want to be able to be found for conversations. So using the LinkedIn terms is going to be important. It's also the way of getting around that idea, Christina, of the fact that job titles are different in so many different companies. So in effect, you're using the LinkedIn generic in addition to your own. That doesn't mean that you should enhance your role, okay, or your title. But you do want to make sure that you're giving both a realistic view as well as the LinkedIn view of what that job really is. If you want
Can
to.
you explain how to use a dash? I missed that, Linda. Sorry.
That's okay. So when you're putting in your job title, okay, in fact, I actually just did this for my profile yesterday. A lot of my titles don't match the LinkedIn drop-down boxes.
Yeah, I find that.
Okay, so what I do is I get to the closest one that matches from the LinkedIn drop-down box. Okay, so one of them, for example, that I just did was I changed my job at Elgin Community College. And my actual title was Employment Transitions Coordinator. Nobody's going to search for that. It's not one of the standard terms. But what I was a career coach. So I put in career coach from the drop-down box. Clicked on it. Then next to that, after it clicked and showed up on the profile, I did a space, a dash, a space, and then put in employment transitions coordinator. So what
So-
shows up first,
So a space, a dash, and
and then a
then,
space,
okay.
and then your actual title. What that does is that the very first thing LinkedIn then sees is that market value term, what's in their standard search engine, to make it easier for them to find you. You're not hiding what your real title is, but you're telling us what it is in addition to. So you can either put your actual title as the first thing in the comments about that job, or you can do it as I did with a space or two, a dash, a space or two, and then your real title. It helps us to know what you do, and it helps LinkedIn to know what you do. Did that help, Lori?
Yes, and is this also when you use that in your resume and they say, put the job description title at the top of the resume, even though it doesn't match any of the titles you've ever had in the job?
Oh, absolutely. So that's an entirely different question. So
Right,
at the
but
top of
it's
your
along
resume,
the
no,
similar, it's along the similar
similar
lines.
lines. So the reason for putting the job description title at the top of your resume, it's really that visual clue. Here's what I'm applying for. I know what the job is. And here I'm going to be now, in your mind, you need to remember that you're now tailoring everything to match that new job.
Yes.
Okay. We too often think about resumes as history-based. Here's who I am. Nobody cares.
Nobody
What-
cares.
They don't, honestly, they don't. What they care is, who are you in relationship to my job? What can you do for me? So by putting that title for that new position at the top of the page, it says, I recognize that this is the job I am applying for. It's that company's visual cue that if it gets lost in my mail, okay, you're applying for this job. This is the pile I want to put you in so that I know where to look at you. But it's also your reminder to yourself that you are now tailoring it for this job. And that word tailoring is going to come up over and over and over again in all of our conversations. Tailor, change, adapt to that particular role. And Frank, I'm going to go back to your idea of, should you apply down? If you can demonstrate that you match 60 to 70% of what they are looking for in that job, whether it's down, up, sideways, I don't care, that's the right job for you to apply for. But it's up to you to demonstrate how you match that job. And especially if you are applying down or sideways, go back to that whole point of, they don't care about everything you've ever done. They care about what you can do for them. Only highlight those skills, those accomplishments that match the new job. It's not, hey, look at me, I can do all of this stuff, right? Unfortunately, all of that stuff often works against us. It used to be that a company could say, I need you to do A, B, C, and D. And you say, oh, I can do A, B, C, and D. And in addition, I can do X, Y, Z, and Q. Isn't that great? And the company says, I don't care. I want you to do A, B, C, and D. And more importantly, I want you to be happy doing just A, B, C, and D. So the more you emphasize those added skills, those accomplishments that fall outside that realm, the less likely you are to move forward in that particular search. I know that that's an ego dump and a problem, but it's still an important thing from a company standpoint.
Mhm.
Yes, Elfie. Did I pronounce that
Yeah,
right?
I have a comment to make because I have a variety of skills, and what I've been I just retired technically from my position. And the reason is because that particular job was just very wide scoped, lots of responsibility. It was just not sustainable after a while. And there were, even after trying to get it reconfigured, there just wasn't, leadership wasn't, on track, on the same track as I was. So what I'm trying to do right now is step back a little bit, take a job that definitely uses my skills, but is more creative. Over the last couple of months, I've been interviewing, and I tried for that sideways kind of position, and I would get to that, sort of final interview, and what would happen is people would honestly say, you are too, we think that this job is not enough for you. And so I think just because of maybe my curiosity, my naturally who I am, it just kind of came out that way, even though I structured all the parts of it so that it was specific to the job. So I don't know. I don't think it always works. if you
No
will.
guarantee that it's always going to work. Absolutely not. But
And it happened 2 times in the last 2 months.
okay, so one of the things then is that we may want to talk a little bit about some of the way that you're presenting yourself in those interviews. Even in the interviews, it's not just the written materials that you're sending out. Your interview stories all have to relate to the new job. If it's not relatable to the new job, if it's not transferable in their mind to the new job, if it goes above and beyond what that new job is looking for, that story will work against you, not for you. That's one of the reasons you get those, we don't know that this job is going to be enough for you, because you're talking about things that go beyond.
Okay, I get that. Because usually it's sort of like, well, what else can I do for you? Because that's been my history and my
Right.
work is I've always taken a job and done more with it.
Right. But they're not interested right now in the, what more can you do for me? They're interested in, I have this particular niche, this particular need. And how can you fill it? How can you help me solve my problem? Because basically that's what it is. A job opening is a problem that a company has. They have a need that needs to be filled. You want to show them how you can fill that particular need. And the more you talk about the other things, the less likely they are to say that you can, want to, or will remain long enough to fill that particular need.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good point. I have an interview tomorrow, and it is a niche position, so I'll try that out.
Okay, so everything that you do needs to be based on that niche, that particular role. And I know that's tough. And when I started to say that it was an ego hurt kind of thing, we all know that we can do so much more. And to try and put ourselves in those boxes is important. So an analogy I sometimes use is a car, right? You're buying a car. For me, a car is a refrigerator on wheels, as my husband calls it. I don't care about style. I don't care about all the bells and whistles. I want the safety features. I want it to be 4-wheel drive. I want it to be comfortable so that I can actually reach the pedals, because I admit it, I'm really vertically challenged. So I need that. And then I need it to be reliable. I don't care that it has a sunroof. I don't care that it can also, in addition to driving, it can go into the water and you can use it as a flotation device. I don't care that it, all of that extra stuff doesn't work for me. I don't care that it can go 300 miles an hour. So using those 300-mile-an-hour flotation device sunroof as selling points don't work for me. Think about what that particular job is looking for and tailor your conversation, your materials to what they are looking for. It's that whole idea of they don't care about everything you've ever done. They only care about what they can do, you can do for them in that particular role at that particular time. Once you're in the organization and in the job, if you want to talk about how you can grow after you've proven yourself in that role, okay? You've built those internal relationships, then you can go to the, what else can I do for you? But if you're going in as an employee, they have a specific need. Your role during your job search is to demonstrate that you can fill that particular need. And that's it. And that's tough.
One trick pony, basically.
Unfortunately, Frank, yeah. And I know that that's a very tough thing to think about, but it's true.
Oh, I get it. It totally makes sense.
Okay, so how many of you have been hiring managers? Okay. So when you were hiring people, were you looking for somebody to fill a particular spot? What were you looking for them to do? Did you want to know that they had actually read your materials? That they understood the company? That they understood what your perceived need was? That they were willing to do what you wanted them to do? Of course you did. Hiring managers are no different than you are. So think about it from not your perspective. And it's hard to put yourself to some extent in the other person's shoes. But I talk about formatting your resume, your cover letter, and your interview stories for the dummy on the other side of the desk. Okay. I've been there, done that, right? And all those things. But if you think about it, the easier you make it for me to see you in my role, the easier you make it for me to see that you can solve my problem, the more likely I am to want to move forward. So it's up to you to do that. And the people who say, well, I'm just going to send out everything with everything I've got, and they'll figure it out. No, they won't. Or they may not. But why take that chance? Great question. Anybody else have a question? Okay. So one of the things that's important as we're starting to rethink these roles and our job search for the year is to think about putting in place your own support systems. It's also important to rethink how you do that job search and putting together your new materials. If companies are really moving toward that skills-based hiring approach, and yes, I know, Frank, you're being skeptical, okay? I am too, to some extent. However, I am actually starting to see it in some organizations. Not many yet, I'll admit it. But if you're thinking about it from that standpoint, it becomes even more important for you to emphasize the skills that you have for that particular job. And if you've worked with me on a resume, you know that I talk about putting your skills at the very top of the page. When people are taking a look at your resume, and okay, you've got 2 to 9 seconds to grab their attention. So you want to make sure that you're hitting them right up front with what works for them. Now, what you may not hear as often is that in terms of an interview, a good interviewer can tell normally within the first 4 minutes how much time they're really investing mentally in the conversation. And at that point, it's either a confirm or a deny. You're either reinforcing what I thought or you're going to change my mind. But I already have some sort of an opinion. Think about it as making a first impression. The more you can do throughout that interview to tailor your responses to what I need, to what would work for me, to show that you understand what's going on for me and my company, the more likely you are to move forward. And that's really what you want to be able to do. So tailoring it is even more important. Now, one of the questions I often get asked, because companies are, and all the literature you're going to see right now, by the way, says that companies are hiring both for hard skills as well as soft skills. And almost every job posting you see is going to list a lot of those soft skills. The soft skills are really important in terms of your process. Now, the hard skills are what's going to get you your foot in the door. The soft skills are what's going to get you the job. Now, if that's the case, what do we do about hard skills versus soft skills on a resume, cover letter, and your materials? Just saying I'm a great communicator doesn't do you any good. How many of you are also including cover letters in your materials? Great. So cover letters really should be included each and every time. I'll be the first to admit that not everybody reads them. I will also be the first to admit that not everybody will read the cover letter before the resume. I admit that I'm one of those. I read the resume first, then I read the cover letter. And I do that because I want to make sure that you've got the basics information first before I take the time. But the cover letter, for many of us, makes the difference in terms of whether or not you go beyond that initial read of the resume to the foot in the door. If your cover letter is simply a repeat of what's in your resume, don't bother. You're talking about soft skills. The cover letter is your opportunity, okay, Frank, to preempt that conversation about why you're taking that step. It's your chance to demonstrate your conversational style, your communication style, your writing style. It's your chance to start demonstrating some of those soft skills and demonstrate that not just are you interested in a job, but you know enough about this company that you want this job, and this is why. So you demonstrate those soft skills in your cover letter. You demonstrate your soft skills to some extent in your interview stories, absolutely. And you can also demonstrate those soft skills in talking about accomplishments or even the things that you talk about in your job and the things that you did. Led a team of, right? That says leadership more than saying the word leadership. So by demonstrating, it becomes a much stronger point than anything else. So that skills-based hiring is going to include those soft skills. But let's talk, and maybe we'll do it again in another lunch and learn, but let's talk more about how you include and how you talk about those soft skills rather than just using the phrases and the words. All right, next question. What is it about your job search that you think you would like to change a little bit besides getting a job? I mean, I love having you all here, but I like when Michael could come in and say, hey, I found a job. Michael, it was great to have you here, and we will miss you. Okay, feel free to come back anytime and just stop in for a couple of minutes if that works. But We'd like you all to be alumni at some point.
I have kind of a follow-up, not necessarily a question, but just
Okay.
yeah, when you said, let a team of, that shows you are a leader, right? That makes sense. Communication is a little more difficult. So you might say something like, I spoke to, I mean, what do you say?
So communication is something that you really more demonstrate, Frank. So you're going to demonstrate.
That's an interview. I mean, that's when you would showcase that, I guess.
You
But in the
showcase that.
resume, it's
No,
almost impossible.
you don't showcase communication in your resume unless it's a writing job and you're saying you wrote X number of manuals, as an example. But you showcase your writing style in your cover letter. You don't have to say anything. It's the way you write, the way you're communicating and presenting yourself as well as your ideas, that personality that's going to demonstrate that communication style. In terms of oral communication, that you're going to have to do during the interview. That's the way you present yourself that way. Great question, though.
Fair enough.
I will also tell you for a number of interviews I had, if you post on LinkedIn, people will look at that and will actually ask you about posts you've done and how did you do this and how did you do that. So that's another way to kind of get on the conversation of your communication style, how you present yourself. And they're also looking to see if your in person is going to match your LinkedIn profile as well.
Absolutely. And great points. In fact, that's a whole nother discussion for another lunch and learn or more. But the idea of getting that communication style on LinkedIn, being active on LinkedIn. Don't use LinkedIn just as a static platform. I'm there. Okay. I have a resume, and LinkedIn should not be your resume. Okay. But it shouldn't just be you're out there and then you expect everybody to come to you. You need to be active. And one of the things that's great about LinkedIn is not just being able to use it for that networking platform, but to be able to start demonstrating your expertise by making professional level comments, even if you're not posting, but making professional level comments on people's posts. To be able to demonstrate that you're moving the conversation forward, it helps to give you that social proof, if you will, that you know what you're talking about. So that's absolutely something that we should talk about, and maybe we'll do that next week. Okay. By the way, if you're commenting on LinkedIn, don't just say, yay, congratulations. Okay. Michael, I might do that for your job. That's great. Okay. Deetra, yours too. But for almost everything else, don't just like and comment. Tell us why. What is it about it that makes sense? And if your comment is at least 8 words, which by the way can include somebody's name as you're tagging them. But if your comment is at least 8 words, LinkedIn will pick it up. And it will start to count. What other questions can I answer for you all today?
I do have one about the this whole AI putting your resume through that and using, unless this is going to be another topic for another session. They're saying run everything through Chat GPT for keywords and changing your resume to match that. That's what everybody's doing.
Okay, so ChatGPT is a mixed bag. Any kind of AI and job search is a mixed bag. And yes, that is something that we will specifically talk about at a later date to get more information. But here's my big takeaway in terms of ChatGPT or any kind of AI, running your resume through it. When you run your resume through one of those job scans, if you will, it matches every single word. It has no way of knowing what is most important in terms of that job. You do. Trust yourself. If you are using ChatGPT or any other kind of AI to write your resume or to write your comments, use it only as a starting point to get you thinking. Too many people are starting to use it as a way of writing their resumes or writing their cover letters or writing their comments on LinkedIn. And it will work against you, not for you. People reading it will know. They may not figure it out right away, but they will know. And unless the job requires you or enables you to use that for everything you do on the job, you're not being true, and it's not a true representation of you. We're finding that recruiters are increasingly not only getting annoyed at ChatGPT or AI-based resumes, those that are generated that way, but they're rejecting them out of hand. It
Well,
has
I
to be.
guess my question was not necessarily my resume, but you put the job description in Chat GPT to glean out the keywords, but then Laura just put a something in the chat about how to get out the keywords. I mean, there was JobScan and all these other tools before Chat GPT
Yes.
came out during COVID when I was last unemployed, and then all of a sudden this, AI came out, and I'm
Yep.
like, okay, which is better? What should we be using? But we can, if you want to do a deeper dive in a later session.
So my feeling is, for the most part, and we can talk about how to find out those keywords. Yes, you can use some of those if you choose to as a starting point. But remember, you have to be able to read it and make sure that it makes sense. Put on your hiring manager hat. Put on your Boolean search term hat. Okay. For example, some of those ChatGPTs or AIs or job scans are going to pull out things like leadership, communication, teamwork, multitasking. I'm not going to search on those terms. That's not going to help me narrow my field. And I'm not talking about using an AI to do a search. I'm talking about what's most important to me. When I'm looking at somebody to do my job, whether I'm looking at your resume, your cover letter, your LinkedIn profile, I'm looking for somebody who understands what my role is all about and has a way of talking about it in a way that shows that you're really matching what I need. And if I'm thinking, remember we talked at the beginning about using some of those LinkedIn drop-down boxes, those key value terms. If the AI can help you determine what some of those might be, then that's a good starting point. But you all know, you all have good brains. You know what's important. And we can do some work in terms of talking about how to find some of those skills. Use the AI tools if you want to as a prompt, but don't use it to surpass or to think that it's any better than what your mind is. It's just a way of helping you get started along the track. If you're doing it, Professional Me is a good one to take a look at. You can look at JobScan, but always compare it to your own view of what's important. And if you have questions, bring them up and we'll talk about them. But I am going to bring in somebody to talk about AI because I will admit I'm still learning about it too. My only caveat is make sure that when you're using it, make sure that you're putting it as a prompt, as an idea generator, not as your words. Michael mentioned that we want to make sure that, for example, your LinkedIn profile matches the person that I see and that I meet. The same is true with what you're generating. You're talking about your communication voice. It has to be you, not that AI voice. Okay. All right. I have a task for you all that I would like you to do. Two things. One of which is connect with each other. Connect with me. These job search lunch and learns are free and open to any job seeker. But in addition to that, and our private group where you can ask some of these questions and maybe we can give some additional answers. I also will be happy to work with you one-on-one. That's the way that I make my money, okay, is providing coaching sessions as well. So if anybody wants to reach out for that, there's a link in the chat for a quick 20-minute session. Okay, so that we can decide what it is you're looking for, talk about your goals, and if I might be able to help. In addition, if you have specific questions in our private chat, ask them. And here's my next ask. In that private chat group, would you please, until I put together a new Jamboard, put together some topic ideas that you'd like to see us cover? These lunch and learn sessions are designed to provide job search related information and support. And the more I know about what kinds of things you're looking for, the more I can make sure that those are the kinds of topics that we cover. So if anybody has any ideas, you can put them in the chat. You can put them in our private group. You can email them to me directly. My email address is also in the chat. As I mentioned, I'm going to turn off the recording.